Hello, in this video I'm going to be looking at the Tiger Frontline. So this is one of the tier 7 tutorial tanks which is going to be free in June, free to earn completely, though right now at this moment I'm not sure how the Tiger Frontline itself is going to be coming, though I do know it's going to be free to get. So what is this tank? It's essentially a Tiger 1, the tech tree Tiger 1, with a bit different stats in terms of its mobility and its gun. Its armor is fairly similar, though it is a bit better on this tank. So I will go over the review on my website and you can check it out if you want it without any of this commentary. So the Tiger Frontline, you can see its armor here against 180mm of AP, and you can see that it is actually very strong. There is not really any weak point on the front of the hull except for that small machine gun port and the very small weak point on the top of the cupola. You can tell that the lower plate is also quite strong. In fact, it is much better than the lower plate of the Tiger 1. This one is 162mm thick, the Tiger 1's is 144. So better armor overall on the front of the hull. The hull sides also, you can see when the hull is turned, it is very good. Those are also stronger than the Tiger 1, with the lower part of the hull being 85 instead of the Tiger 1's 67, and then the upper part of the hull being 95 instead of the Tiger 1's, I believe, 89. So overall armor profile of this tank is better than the Tiger 1, though it still has the same issue that if you do load premium ammo, it is just flat armor and it is not strong enough to really easily be able to bounce all ammo. And you can see here the upper plate is 182mm thick, so if you aren't using enhanced armor, higher penetration heavy tanks will be able to go through the upper plate without needing premium ammo. And you can see here the turret is overall still fairly strong, but in total it is only 215mm thick, meaning that of course if enemies have enough penetration they do have a chance to go through that turret. But overall you can see that the armor of this tank is actually quite good and in fact better than the tech tree Tiger 1. You can also see hull down armor profile, again quite similar. Of course you need to try keep the hull hidden because it is just complete flat armor and it doesn't change too much when you do use the 8 degrees of gun depression that this tank has, which another thing better than the Tiger 1, the fact it has 8 instead of 7. But of course this does mean that like the Tiger 1, its performance against different tiers is very different. Against tier 6, the tank has almost no weak points on the whole front. Against tier 7, it is reliable armor, but if enemies use premium ammo, they will be able to go through. And then against tier 8, you just don't really have much armor at all, unless fighting very low penetration tanks. But overall, not bad news for the armor of this tank. Next, the gun. This tank mounts a same 88mm gun as the Tiger 1. Its ammo is the same AP, APCR and HE. Its penetration is 180 on standard ammo, which is pretty average for a tier 8 heavy, but it is significantly less than the Tiger 1, which has 203, which is one of the really nice things on the Tiger, its high standard penetration. But 180 in tier 8 is perfectly normal for, tier 7 is perfectly normal for a heavy tank. Premium ammo 238 is actually quite good, and 47 on HE is pretty normal. Damage is 230, slightly increased over other 88mm guns, but not massively, and its reload isn't too bad at 5.8. In fact, its reload is actually quite similar to the Tiger 1, which does give it better DPM due to its higher alpha as well, at almost 2400. Its aim time is also better than the Tiger, tech tree Tiger, I should clarify, and that is due to this tank having a decent base aim time. One of the things about a lot of tier 7 heavy tanks is that even though they have fairly low alpha, they have horrible base aim time for some reason. Luckily this tank doesn't have that. It has decent base aim time with some very good gun handling and also good dispersion, so it does actually have a very reliable feeling and accurate gun. You will notice that in battle. One of the main downsides though is the poor shell velocity. 773 on standard, and HE is quite low, and even the APCR 966, that is not impressive at all. Gun depression though is good, 8 degrees. That is something that is a bit annoying about the Tiger 1 only having 7. This one does have 8, which makes it very nice. Overall, the gun is very reliable and it feels great to use in battle. And compared to the Tiger 1, it gains some, it loses some. Less penetration on standard, but overall better handling and a bit more alpha damage, which does make it nice for trading. Next, the mobility. This is where it is quite different to the tech tree tank. 40 forwards is a bit less than the tech tree tank, but still for a heavy tank that is a very good top speed, 40 kilometers. Reverse speed 12, that's fairly normal for a heavy tank. 13.2 power to weight ratio is not too bad, and it weighs 57 tons. On hard terrain, it has decent acceleration, 13.2, with pretty good traverse speed of 36.7. Of course, this pales in comparison to the Tiger 1, which I believe has around 50 degrees traverse speed, which is very high for a heavy tank. But its acceleration rates aren't actually too different on hard terrain. On medium terrain though, it only has 9.5 horsepower per ton with 26 traverse speed, and that is due to its 1.4 medium terrain resistance, which does make it significantly slower, and you can really feel the difference between the terrain types. And this tank is one of the slower heavy tanks in tier 7 when you do go on medium terrain, and if you've played the Tiger 1, you will instantly notice the difference in mobility between these two tanks, as the Tiger Frontline is definitely less mobile than the Tiger 1. Very quickly, this tank has the improved engine power boost, and this will increase the mobility of the Tiger Frontline, which is definitely needed for this tank. You definitely need to be using this consumable on the Tiger Frontline because it is just quite sluggish when you do, well, overall, but also especially when you go on medium terrain. What this does is increase your power to weight ratio by 3 horsepower per ton roughly on medium terrain, 4 on hard, or 8 to 12 degrees of traverse depending on what terrain type you're on. It also, of course, boosts your reverse speed, which would allow you to reverse at 20 kilometers per hour, which in a heavy tank that is always really useful. Top speed also increases, but generally you're not going to be utilizing that too much. But in terms of consumables, I would just use this setup: adrenaline with the restoration pack and improved engine power boost. I've already explained why the engine power boost is important, because this tank isn't very fast, and you just need this for repairs, and adrenaline because all tanks can use it really, and generally this tank doesn't seem to have the biggest issues with modules, so one repair kit generally does me okay. Provisions, it just has a normal setup, so I use double food with fuel. Of course, the fuel being mandatory, don't drop the fuel for anything else. If you are going to change something else for a repair kit, use protective kit instead of the food, but don't use it instead of the fuel, because the fuel is just so important for the mobility. You can even equip it like this if you do want to have a bit better acceleration. But equipment wise, I would use gun rammer, definitely, because this tank is, well, tier 7 is a DPM tier really, and you don't really want to be lowering your DPM in a tier where DPM matters a lot. On top of that, its penetration is perfectly fine on both standard and premium ammo, so really there's not too much use to calibrated shells. If you did want more penetration, you may as well just go play the Tech Tree Tiger 1. Defense system, because improved modules doesn't do much. Improved optics, because this is a heavy tank. Engine accelerator, again, because this tank is very slow at accelerating on medium terrain, and traverse speed really doesn't feel that bad. Enhanced armor is definitely needed on this tank because all of the armor on the front of a Tiger is flat. It's all fairly thick, so enhanced armor does actually benefit this tank a good amount. Let me see here. Upper plate goes up by 6mm. The lower plate goes up by, what is that, 5mm. the gun mantlet goes up by 7mm. It may not seem like a high amount, but all of these numbers are just on the cusp of tier 7 levels of penetration. A lot of tanks in tier 7 have between, well, tier 7 and tier 8 have between 170 and 200mm of penetration, so these small increases to the hull do actually make a very noticeable difference to the armor. And in fact, I did a comparison so you can actually see it here. So here is with improved assembly. This is if you're not improving the armor, and here is with enhanced armor. You can see when the tank is facing forward, there is a fair difference in how red the upper plate and the lower plate are against 100mm of 180mm AP. So it is definitely worth using, especially as 180 is a very common number in tier 7. Next, gun lane drive. You could actually switch this out for supercharger because this tank has low shell velocities and it already has better aim time than, for example, the Tiger P or the Tiger 1 or the Skoda T45 or the VK4503. All those tanks have much worse base aim time than the Tiger Frontline, but much better shell velocity, so you could try balance that out with supercharger, but generally I'm playing the tank in closer range, so I'm going to use gun lane drive. Though either of those are a good choice. For this one as well, either is a good choice, refined gun or vertical stabilizer, because this tank has both good gun handling and good dispersion. It's basically down to you if you want to min-max on the dispersion or you want to try and make the gun handling a bit better. Next, toolbox and consumable delivery system. I will show two replays in this tank. The first one, it will show really the armor profile of this vehicle, and the second one will be showing more the gun and the mobility. I did have a third battle which was quite good, but I am not showing this one as I believe these two are a bit more representative of the tank. Once again, I have the mod on where it makes the maps look like dawn, so do let me know if you prefer it looking like this or if I should change it back, because either can be done. But in this battle, you can see I am top tier. A lot of heavy tanks on each team, so I'm just going to go to the usual side where heavies go. You will notice here my mobility is being a bit boosted by the Super Hellcat, but you can see sort of how slow this vehicle is. I'm going to activate the improved engine power boost in a moment, as I do want to rush across the open to get into position. But notice in this battle it's mainly going to be about the armor of this tank, and as shown, this tank has very reliable armor when it is top tier. If enemies want to penetrate this tank, they do really need to just use premium ammo, and you can see that here. I'm essentially exposing the hull deliberately to all the enemies, and they're all bouncing off. So seeing as the enemies are playing quite passively, I do decide I'm going to push forward in a moment here. And you will also see the gun handling of this tank is quite good, as I am able to snap a shot into that Hellcat there. But you can sort of see the mobility of this tank. Not very impressive, and if you've played a Tiger 1 before, you will know that that is a lot more mobile than what I'm showing here. Bit of a bad shot there, but I do kind of want to get forward, so I stop getting shot by this E25, who's being a bit annoying. But ironically, pushing forward does expose my tank to him even more. So of course, with any heavy tank, if you're showing the side or rear armor to the enemy, you're not going to bounce anything, but you can see up to this point in battle, I've bounced almost 2,000 damage just with the front of the hull facing towards these enemies. Now, to be fair, these enemies don't seem like the best of players, but then good players aren't just going to shoot at red armor and deliberately bounce off. So this does actually show quite well the hull armor, the good armor of this tank. actually working, as I wasn't really side scraping or anything, I was just showing the entire hull front to the enemies. And remember, these tanks are now tier 7, they were tier 6 before, but they've been moved up to tier 7, so of course against tier 6 enemies and same tier enemies, it is going to have very reliable armor if enemies don't use premium ammo. So you can see there, down 6 shots, 1900 blocked damage, got a 2nd class, and I don't think I'm running any boosters for this battle, so I do still make 67,000 credits, which isn't bad at all for a 2nd class in tier 7. So the next battle is going to show more of the gun and the mobility of this tank, hopefully. And it is on Rockfield. Once again, I am top tier, so that is worth noting. Of course, this tank against tier 8s, its armor is going to be a lot less reliable. It will need to use gold a bit more, but still, generally its turret will be decent, its gun will still perform well against tier 8s in terms of its DPM and accuracy and all of that. The main difference between tier 7 and 8 gameplay is definitely going to be how you can rely on the armor, how you can use it. In tier 8 you definitely do have to employ more hull down use, more side scraping than you do in tier 7, where you can actually just show the front of the hull because enemies can't go through it most of the time. But you can see here the enemies haven't gone to the usual side, which is base C, and you can see also I haven't yet activated my speed boost consumable, and you can see how slow I'm really going across the medium terrain for the most part. But here I can see the enemies off on the other side of the map. You can see how slow the shell velocity of this tank is, but you can also tell this tank's accuracy and aim time are both pretty good. The main differences to the Tiger 1 in that aspect is that this tank aims in a lot quicker, but it has slightly worse dispersion at 0.326 compared to 0.308. But at this point you can also see this tank has got very nice DPM. 230 alpha with a 5.8 second reload is definitely impressive for tier 7, especially when you combine it with the good armor of this tank. But seeing that the enemies are really completely pushing into our base and we're already down 2 tanks, I decide to push across and try get into the ditch where they are likely to go across the open. So here I'm going to just wait for the enemies to cross and try and use that good DPM, which enemies probably aren't expecting, as this tank at this point was still very new and enemies haven't faced it yet. So I'm being a bit careful of the Annihilator because of course he does 630 damage, but I do want to aim in on the Challenger. And I do miss, and that would be down to the slightly worse dispersion than the Tiger 1. The Tiger 1 may have made that shot a bit easier, but of course that also has aim time, so who can tell. But you can see here, the Annihilator facing this tank for the first time chose to, for some reason, just shoot standard ammo and bounce all 3 shots. That IS-2 shielded does shoot premium, hence he low rolls for 360, and then he shoots another premium round, almost minimum rolling 258. But now we have made the battle a bit closer, so I'm going to try and use my good DPM against this Annihilator, who, despite his better DPM, he still takes 2 full magazines to kill me. So you can see here, he now loads premium ammo, which does go through the front of my tank with no problems, doing 519. I now try to get a shot on his side, but then I hit the auto ricochet. And here is something which the Tiger 1 may struggle more to do. I killed the Annihilator in 1 shot, doing 231 damage, whereas that's a fairly average roll for this tank. A Tiger 1 would have had a slight high roll. So it is quite nice to have that slight more alpha, 10 more, from 220 to 230. It is still nice, especially when you don't lose out on any of the DPM or any of the gun handling. But you can see in that battle, 3000 damage, 650 assisted, a first class and a high caliber, which do add a bit more credits, giving me 122,000, which again, quite good credits considering this tank is going to be completely free. But yeah, that is the Tiger Frontline. I think this tank is actually pretty good, and it is going to be worth it to collect, definitely, but also to play. It is different enough to the Tech Tree Tiger 1 that it is offering a few unique aspects. Of course, its armor is a bit more reliable in exchange for worse mobility, but its gun does feel actually really quite nice and enjoyable to use. It also does gain on a few aspects such as the gun depression, the better aim time, slightly better DPM. But yeah, it still keeps that same Tiger 1 type of gameplay, and it is a fairly nice tank to have. Definitely not a bad one, especially when you have that reliable armor of the Tiger against tier 6s. It does work out very nice. And unlike some of these other tanks, which you will be seeing reviews later on, the Tiger still can perform fairly well against tier 8, just due to its good DPM and the fact that some tier 8 tanks do still have to load premium ammo, and you can side scrape in this tank. So it's not suddenly trash when you do face tier 8. But yeah, that is it for the Tiger Frontline. Do get it since it is free. This tank only sells for 500 gold, so you may as well keep it. It is a pretty nice tank. But yeah, that is it for the review. Thanks for watching.